This is Loyalty Out Loud with Capillary Technologies. My name is Megan Fiorendino, and I am on the marketing team here at Capillary. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Aidan Lundy, who is the Senior Vice President, who is part of our Capillary Europe leadership team. So welcome, Aidan, and thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you, Megan. Good to be with you today.
Yeah. All right, so to get started, can you explain your role here at Capillary?
Sure. So like you said, I'm part of the Capillary Europe leadership team. I'm the Senior Vice President of Customer Success over here in Europe. So essentially what that means is my role is making sure all the customers are happy and succeeding and doing well. So everything from the account management to how we then deliver it, and also, how we engage them strategically to drive forward, hit their objectives and to achieve growth with them.
Great. Okay, so to get started, we usually ask, what's your favorite loyalty program and why? So what is your favorite program across the world, and what are some of the reasons why?
Yeah, I've got two, and they're for very different reasons. I'll start with the one that I kind of admire slash is my favorite, and I'm probably between my wife and I, with the amount of deliveries that come to the house, it would appear that we're very loyal. Maybe a bit of a cliche, but Amazon. Um, and I think my take on it and why I admire it is if we move away from what is very frequently called out, the recommendation engine and all of that, which is hugely powerful. The thing I think is quite bold is it's a paid for service. So people are paying, not an insignificant amount of money to be a part of this program, to actually have this membership. I think, look, straight off the bat, that leads to a huge amount of engagement because people are saying, well, if I spent this, I want to get that plus back. So people's desire then to maximize the value of that membership and to extract more than they've paid in itself then drives more engagement with Amazon. So I think it's a really good, it's kind of a bold way to do it because you're putting a barrier to membership, but at the same time, it leads to both, people wanting to game it to get the most out of it, and a bit of a loss aversion. Nobody wants to feel I've paid that money and I haven't gotten that value back. So I think just because of that really interesting and quite bold step of almost creating a pay gate to a loyalty program, I think is a really good way of doing it. Obviously, they've generated a significant amount of data and insight off the back of it that's enabled them to then deliver everything else, because you then need to deliver on your customer promise if you're going to, try and charge people for it. But I think they've done that very well. The other one I like, it's got a special place in my heart because I was part of the Wonderman team here in the UK who shaped it and brought it to life. But it's the Shell Go program. It's a funny one because what I like about it is how it helps me to not have to engage with the brand. I mean, in my mind, when I go to a fuel station, I'm kind of, envisaging my fantasy as an F1 driver where I get in and I'm gone in seconds. Now, it's not quite that quick, but with the app, you can go in, you can select, the pump you're going to fill in from. You can, if there's an offer available, if I've earned something, I can select that and I can pay for it. Then I fill up and then I'm gone. So I don't have to go in, I don't have to queue up, I don't have to be involved in anything else, and I can be in and out really quickly. Like for me, the fueling experience is not something I want to dwell on. So, that for me is great because it's got utility and the ability to kind of extract any value from any offers. Again, I think it's kind of a bold one because a lot of the time you're trying to generate dwell time or lengthen the engagement with the customer. But actually, this program and the functionality enables you to shorten the engagement. But at the same time, that's what's valuable to me, Now, there are offers if you go in store to get other things, and I'm sure they resonate with other people. But it's interesting how they've taken that gamble that for some customers who want to minimize their engagement, but it ends up maximizing their loyalty, they've kind of taken that risk. So, I think it's interesting how they've made that pay off.
Yeah, that's interesting. And both those programs you mentioned kind of take some bold kind of how they're going about their program. Amazon and the Shell with having less time engagement, but it's kind of tailored to their customer.
Exactly, exactly. It's you know you're trying to seek the same outcome as pretty much everybody from a loyalty program, but you can be creative around how you solve it, and also if you fully understand what it is the customer wants from their relationship with the brand, then you can utilize the loyalty or the engagement program to help deliver that. It doesn't
Mhm.
just need to be a value exchange. The value that's being exchanged could be the fact that I'm in and out of the fuel station in under a minute. That's
Yeah,
valuable to me because that's what I want. I want to get in and out quite quickly.
yeah, that's great. Okay, so different regions across the globe are at different maturity levels when it comes to loyalty. How would you describe the loyalty market in the UK and Europe?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, look, Europe and the UK, I think, are highly developed loyalty markets. Consumers are very savvy. If you think from the early days of stamps and catalogs and things like that, to big leaps forward, like Tesco with Dunnhumby, where I spent some time. There's been some really big evolutionary steps from a loyalty perspective that have happened in the UK and Europe, and I think that's always been the case, and it's led to consumers kind of being super savvy on, well, how do I extract value from those programs? And as a result, marketeers and those who are driving the brands need to be more aware of what's available and how to best utilize those things. And it leads to, some really challenging and quite competitive market. But at the same time, that leads to innovation. It leads to, interesting ways of solving those problems. So yeah, I think that's been my take, and it's definitely highly innovative with some very engaged customers.
That's great. Okay. So, in your opinion, what are some key results that brands can drive through loyalty programs or some loyalty initiatives?
Well, honestly, I think depends on what you're trying to achieve. The power of a well designed program is you can do virtually anything you want. Any kind of a metric, any kind of a behavior you're trying to engender from the customers. If you design the program the right way, you can achieve that. That being said, that's a bit of a cop out answer because it's like we can do anything you want. So I would say, for a highly effective, best in class loyalty program, you want to be looking for four things. First one, loyalty, right? So a predominant share of the wallet within the category, or outright brand of choice dominance, like you want to be a Heinz ketchup or something like that, where you are that category owner. You want to generate advocacy. So if you're hitting the sweet spot, customers feeling like they're getting good value exchange, and they have some shared values. There's a frictionless experience, things like that. You know, that customer is going to have a great experience. They're going to see beyond just whatever the product or service they're buying to the overall how the loyalty is kind of enveloping that. And that should lead to advocacy, which hopefully leads to some more customers. Um, Next, I would say is data and decision making. Again, if you set up the program in the right way, you should be garnering a huge amount of data on customer preferences, customer engagement, and their price tolerance, their promotional engagement, all different things. Each of which should hopefully be used for really good decision making, some strategic planning, and an ability to hopefully stay ahead of the game and to keep there with your customers. And then the fourth one, final one, is commercial success. Um, if the program isn't commercially viable, then it's not doing its job. It really needs to be driving either the additional sales required, the retention required, developing more high value customers, and again in enabling those decisions and business decisions off the back of data that again make this a really no brainer commercial decision. That the loyalty program is a positive contributor to the P&L.
Okay, great. So you kind of touched on this earlier in that last question, but so how should brands be thinking about customer loyalty and retention? Like, can you share any examples or any conversations you've had with clients or prospects?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think the brands, they need to look at what are their values, what are their customers' values, and what is the intersection of that. So, how do customers see you, and what part do they see the brand playing in their life? Um, and I think if they can find a good correlation between those and create a proposition that fosters that and really, communicates about that synergy, then there's a good level of authenticity, and that in itself will be valued by the customer. So one example is actually we're working with a progressive retailer here in the UK. They're a grocery retailer, and they're a cooperative. They do some fantastic work in the community. They do some work nationally, but also locally with suppliers and with community organisations. And their whole principles are around that, ethical way of doing business. But at the same time, they're a grocery retailer. Grocery is highly competitive. Prices, people are very price sensitive in that category. So they need to do all of that within the realms of still making sure that their price point is right for customers. Now, the interesting thing we've learned recently is that these values resonate extremely highly with their customers and with both target customers and existing customers. But the awareness is so low, is very low. So what we're looking to help them do is how do they utilize membership, utilize loyalty to really drive forward that engagement and that awareness of that. So how do we, enable the customers to help direct where that, altruistic donations or community engagement is going to go, and just show them that actually by engaging with this brand and by shopping there, that their desire to actually deliver for community and maybe even contribute to charities, they're doing it through their everyday shop. So I think it's that interesting way of how do you utilize a program to deliver on the messages that you really want to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see a lot of brands really need to be like aligned with their company values and put that spirit into their program. So like your customers, I mean, they feel good about shopping. And if they had a choice between, this company or another one, like they would obviously choose this company knowing, their purchase, what they're already going to do is like has like a bigger purpose and like actually does a little bit of good. I think that's awesome how that's incorporated into the loyalty program.
Yeah, and definitely if it's done in an authentic way, where
Yeah.
like a paper company saying they're planting a tree, it's cyclical and it's relevant to them. Whereas, if there was another brand that's just maybe reaching at something to be kind of to be seen to be doing it as opposed to doing
Yeah.
it, that
Not
that lack
being
of
like
authenticity
inauthentic. Yeah.
almost backfires.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. So can you tell us more about Rewards Plus and kind of the capillary proposition with that new tool?
Yeah, sure. So look, Rewards Plus was previously known as Connect. Was run by a company called Tenerity. Myself and some of their colleagues had spent some time at, and obviously have recently become part of the Capillary family. So Rewards Plus was primarily based around one aspect of the loyalty proposition, which is that how do you give value back to end consumers? Um, at its core, it's a platform that can take in multiple different data sources of how customers are shopping or engaging with brands, but also both primary and third party content to be able to give back to the customers. So by primary, I mean the brand itself might have something they want to give back, and then third party could be any raft of different partnerships that are relevant to the customers, and that will give them value back. So by using this program, let's say, for example, you've got a product whereby, giving a discount just isn't really viable. But at the same time, how do we enable our kind of clients to give back value to their customers? And by doing that, to engender, loyalty within them. Obviously, that's now become part of the Capillary family, where we've got, Engage Plus, Loyalty Plus, Insights Plus, and now Rewards Plus. The way I see it is this now gives us kind of across all of the different kind of touch points of how you would want to deliver or build any kind of a loyalty program, you've got these modules that kind of are very focused on each of the core pillars, the actual engage, like the CRM type thing, the loyalty engine, be it points, be it other interactions. As I mentioned earlier, the insights, all of these things should be designed around generating insights to learn more and to make really key business decisions. And then finally, if you want to give back to the customers, Rewards Plus gives you that ability to kind of give value back to customers, to give something to them that, again, fulfills that end of the value exchange from them having shopped with you.
Yeah, I see a lot of programs here that are, I wouldn't say they're all cookie cutters, but a lot of them, like what you get with the program from your points is just like, $5 off or $10 off.
Yeah.
Like how does like Rewards Plus kind of play into giving like your customer options and more like personalized like to your interest with the program?
I think you hit the nail on the head there with personalized. By gathering some insight up front when customers engage with the program and some of their interests, it helps direct our team around, well, what kind of content, what kind of rewards, what kind of discounts or whatever else it might be are going to resonate, between a Megan and an Aidan. And how are they going to see that as actually valuable to them? And that gives us the ability to then go to different third parties where we will, source these rewards and source these offers and so on, and say, look, we've got an audience of very engaged people who are highly interested in this, and that gets us the ability to be able to then present that content. So ensuring that, myself and yourself could have a very different experience on the exact same loyalty program because our interests are different and how we engage with the content is different. And I think it's that cyclical evolution of learning from the engagement and using that information to then say, okay, well, how do we next time capitalize on what we've learned and use that to nudge behavior? And that really ensures that the program is relevant to customers.
Exactly. Okay. So what are some kind of key things a brand should keep in mind, either designing or redesigning the loyalty program?
Yeah. I think it's interesting with the phrasing of it saying redesign. I mean, because in my mind, that kind of intimates there's a program in place, but it's not working in some ways and we want to evolve. And I think key thing there, I'd say, is, learn from what's worked and what's not worked just as much. Get all of that learning on board and say, these things really fell flat with customers. Why did they fall flat? Like, was it something they didn't see value in? Was it just completely irrelevant to them? Did it offend them? Like, what might it be? But also then what worked well? Was it a user interface? Was it a type of a creative? Was it types of offers? Was it frequency of communication? I think all of those types of things. So at least if you are redesigning, you definitely want to learn as much as possible before shuttering any program. How do you take all the positives and also all the learnings from the negatives and ensure that those are kind of baked into whatever comes next? And then obviously if you are starting from a blank page, I think being outcome focused is really key. I think sometimes people will see on other programs some really interesting tactical things that are done, some interesting ways of executing, and say, oh, I want that, I want this. It's like, that's great, and that might be the best thing for you in your program. But the best thing we need to focus on is what's the outcome you're trying to drive. Is it that you want to make sure that your frequency of purchase goes up, or the basket size goes up, or how long people are spending in a store or on a website goes up? What are the kind of outcomes you're trying to drive? And you build up that kind of pool of different outcomes from a customer point of view and what those outcomes then lead to from a KPI perspective. And then you shape the program around that. I think if you focus on that, then the execution and how it's delivered, that can be somewhat irrelevant, so long as the outcomes and the desired results you're trying to drive are really at the forefront of how you design the program.
Great. Okay. And so our last question before we get into our little rapid fire fun questions, can you share some thoughts on the build versus buy decision framework that we hear so much about?
Yeah. Look, this is an interesting one, and frankly, when we have conversations either at RFP stage or with existing clients, it's always a question in their mind, and understandably so. I think there's some solid thinking behind build because there's potentially the ability to capitalize them in the investment. There's the ability to have complete ownership over a roadmap. You're protecting from maybe any competition, and possibly that ownership internally that people want to have. Um, I'll be honest, I do think that partnering possibly outweighs and has more benefits, and primarily because I think it's more efficient, and secondly because I think it future proofs the route. I definitely think it's strong in that. So, like, if you wanted to build from the ground up, there's a significant investment in getting a team together that has all of the skill sets across the various areas. From a design perspective, a data architecture perspective, a data processing perspective, the engineering, the build, and then onto certification and testing, and maybe even creative. Like, it's a huge array of different types of talents that are needed, and frankly, you need top talent in each of those areas to be able to deliver a best in class program. Um, to build that up from scratch, and for what is potentially a one off project, could be very difficult to do in the first place, or if you did it, could be very expensive. Um, and obviously, it's a team that's brought on for a singular output, as opposed to a team that is focused on regularly delivering best in class programs across different ways. So, the converse is then if you're looking at the buy, so partnering with somebody else, they'll have a team in place. This team in place will have huge exposure to multiple ways of delivering against loyalty. That they will have faced the problems that are going to be faced before. And they will have experiences on what works in different ways before. Now, I think the key thing here is making sure that any partner that people engage with has an ability to kind of use some of the kind of an underlying infrastructure that's somewhat common. You don't need to want to reinvent the wheel on some of those underlying things, because that's where, frankly, there's a lot of cost in building that. But at the same time, there should be some efficiencies by using a partner to build some of that, because those are going to be common infrastructural things that will be slightly again common regardless of what the end product is going to be. The next thing I would say is you need to make sure that partner isn't going to kind of force you down a one size fits all route. It needs to be a genuine partnership, a genuine iterative process of designing. Um, and I think the key then is having a partner like ourselves that has multiple modules where you can kind of pick and choose different modules off the shelf that come together to build, a very different entity that could be built for another client. So those are some of the kind of benefits. The other key benefit is that future proofing. So, like I said, if you're building in house, you're bringing that team together, you're probably going to want to have them on board for the period of build, maybe a little bit after, but you're not going to keep that team on board, infinite. It's far too expensive, and there isn't enough for them to do. Whereas if you're partnering with somebody else, you have continuous access to that resource to be able to evolve, to evaluate how the program is working, to kind of create a co-owned roadmap of what does the future look like, and to be able to respond to changes in the market, changes from competition, changes to your consumers or your own product set, so that your program can continuously evolve to stay best in class and to stay meeting the customer needs, and hopefully to stay, hitting all the different KPIs and being a successful program.
Great. Good answers. Good answers. Okay. So kind of to wrap up, conversation, I'm going to ask you a few rapid fire questions, only 4.
Okay.
So the first one is, what is one thing that stands out about the UK consumer?
They're very savvy and they're very highly engaged.
Okay. Customer retention or customer acquisition?
I'm going to say retention because it's harder, because acquisition's a bit of a, fool me once, shame on me. But retention, fool me twice, shame on you. So you gotta continuously deliver to achieve retention. It's definitely a bit hard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is rugby. I'm recovering from some recent heartbreak, having been to France to watch Ireland play in the World Cup, and yeah, it's been a road to recovery. I'm doing much better now.
Good to hear. Good to hear. All right, last one. What is your favorite book or podcast?
Honestly, favorite book probably changes frequently, but one I read not too long ago was called Red Notice by a guy called Bill Browder. It's fascinating. It's basically his journey into Russia, setting up a huge hedge fund, and then some terrible, terrible things that come off the back of that, and what leads him then to kind of completely change tack from being a businessman to being, an advocate and actually working really hard to change things for good. But it's a fascinating book and it's an amazing read, and he's a very admirable person. So I highly recommend it. Give it a go and see what you think.
Awesome, will do. All right, well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you, Aidan, for all of your insights. It's been a pleasure.
Brilliant. Thanks, Megan. Take
All
care.
right, thank you. All right, bye.